What's going on, guys? So today the video is going to be a little bit different than usual. We're going to be covering mold making, specifically scaling up a particular piece that you want to make larger. For instance, recently I have done a 6-inch amber collection scale Robert Muldoon over on Instagram, and I used the Kenner Series 2 Robert Muldoon head, and I scaled it up to fit on a 6-inch figure, and a lot of you guys really liked that, and you asked me, hey, how did you do that? So I'm going to show you guys how I did that in the video today, and I'm going to be incorporating more and more mold making and casting videos here in the lineup, not every week, but occasionally I'll be throwing one in here and there. There's not really a one video to rule them all kind of thing, so I'm going to have to break it up into several different videos, but that way you guys can go to that exact video if you want to know how to do this. But this video is going to be a little bit longer, so go ahead and settle in for this because it is a gauntlet. We're going to start out first here. You're going to need something to blow up, right? So in this case, we're going to be using Series 2 Robert Muldoon and do the kind of boil and pop and take the head off the figure without damaging it, if you don't want to have to buy another one. But I went ahead and just heated them up, popped the head off, and this is the part that I'm going to scale up to a 6-inch scale. So the materials I'm going to be using, this is Umu 25 by Smooth On. You can use any kind of liquid silicone that you want. I like Smooth On Umu 25 because it's got a 15-minute pot life and it cures in 75 minutes, so like an hour and a half and some change. And you can just blow through molds. You can bust through them, get a bunch done in a day, and they're done. You don't have to wait 24 hours for it to cure. So what we're going to do first is take the head, and we need to create a little base for it. And I've got this little lid here, plastic lid, and we need to be able to put the head on here so I can pour the resin in. So I don't really need the peg that attaches it to the body. So what I'm going to do is take this clay, flatten it down, and then kind of push it up with a little clay sculpting tool up around the area. That way it's just pushed up flat against the base of the neck, because I'm going to be cutting that all off later to drill out a ball socket for it to fit on the ball joint of the G.I. Joe figure. So now that we got the head on the platform here with the clay, we're going to need to create a cylinder mold for like a mold box for it. And I like to use old paint cans or paint tubes here, right? So I cut the top and the bottom off. It's a nice round, perfect cylinder, and it will fit over the head, and it'll give it enough room in there. That way when it grows, it can shrink and grow, and it won't have any issues. So I'm going to take the mold box off first before we attach it down. And what you want to do when it comes to heads is you want to mix your silicone up, right? So you got 15 minutes to do this, so you want to work quick. But I've already made this mold, so I know that it's a tablespoon of part A and a tablespoon of part B. So I'm going to need 2 tablespoons of the liquid rubber. So I will go ahead and pour that out. And when I'm ready to pour my mold, I take a paintbrush, right? So when it comes to heads or things that have like little details in them, you want to paint a little layer of silicone over those details first so you don't catch any air bubbles in it, because oftentimes air bubbles will get caught in the eye sockets and in the nose area, and you won't see it until you go to pour your resin and you've got a piece that has air bubbles in it. So you want to paint a nice thin layer of silicone over that face and get it down into all the details behind the ears, in the ears, under the chin. Really detailed things, you want to do a little thin layer of silicone on it. So now, hypothetically speaking, say we've already got our layer of silicone over the face. We're going to go ahead and attach the little mold box here, push it down in, and then take some hot glue, and I want to just hot glue a little bead around the clay and the mold box area just to seal it up. That way none of that silicone leaks out and creates a big expensive mess, because silicone is expensive and we don't want to waste any. Now that the mold box is ready to pour, again, hypothetically speaking, saying we're going to pour right now since I've already made this mold, I'm just going to demonstrate with invisible silicone. You want to do a high pour into this thing. If you don't have a degassing chamber, a high pour is going to be your best friend. So you're going to want to pour the silicone up from high, and that way the air bubbles that are in the silicone will like break out and it won't make it into the mold, and that way you get a nice clean bubble-free mold. So now we're going to go to the blow up part here, how we're going to expand this mold. You're going to need two things, a plastic tub and a bottle of odorless mineral spirits. You want to put your mold into the plastic tub and then take your mineral spirits and submerge the silicone part. And what you're going to do is let this sit for, I would say, at least 5 to 8 hours. You can check it periodically in between if you want to make sure that you're getting the right scale. You don't want it to expand too much. You know, you got to catch it at the right time to get the right scale. This Muldoon head that I made was sitting in this stuff of mineral spirits for about 8 hours, and then it was ready for me to pour my first casting to test the size to see if it was the right scale that I needed. So once you've let it sit, you know, overnight or whatever, you go ahead and take the mineral spirits and just pour it back into the container it came in, and you can reuse this over and over and over again, and you can continue to expand and scale up molds to your heart's content. You don't have to throw this stuff out. It is reusable. So now you can see here the mold has expanded a little bit, and again, this is all, I've already done all this, so I'm just kind of demonstrating it so you guys can see. But you want to get the mold out, and you want to really dry it up. You don't want any of that mineral spirits inside of the mold because it will react with the resin. So make sure that you wipe the inside out with either a Q-tip or a paper towel. If you've got some compressed air, like a can of air or an airbrush, you can kind of evaporate those mineral spirits and just get them out. So now, here we go. We're going to be moving on to actually casting the part. So I like to take some baby powder and pour it into the mold and then kind of tap it around and get it into all the little nooks and crannies. This is going to kind of break the surface tension, and it's going to cut down on the amount of bubbles that you might potentially get in the mold, because I'm assuming that you don't have a pressure pot. Like, I don't use a pressure pot, so I have to kind of go through these extreme measures to make sure that my pieces come out really nice. Especially human heads, you want them to be perfect and smooth. So now we're going to cast the human head. Now, I don't like to paint flesh tone because it's just really difficult to get it to look right. So I like to dye my resin pieces, especially if I'm doing skin tone things. So I've got some flesh tone resin dye, and I'm going to mix this flesh tone with a little bit of red to put some warmth into it. And I have a container of it pre-mixed right here because I do a lot of human parts, and all I have to do is just dip my mixing stick in there to take it out, and I know that it's going to come out and it's going to look right the first time. I don't have to kind of guess about what the color is going to be. So again, I have measured the resin cast Muldoon head that I've already made, so I know how much resin I'm going to need. And I'm going to put the part A in here, which is the resin part, and I'm going to put my dye in, and I'm going to mix my dye in with the resin first before I put in the hardener. And just a drop of the flesh tone resin will be all it will take. And then I'm going to put in side B, and it's the same exact thing. So we're just going to measure it out here and then pour it into the cup and then mix it up. Another little tip that I like to do is take my mixing stick and actually put it down in the mold and push some of that resin into the nose area and into the eye socket areas, just to make sure, because you will catch air bubbles if you're not careful. They are microscopic, but you will see them as soon as you start to paint. So I like to make sure that I can get that resin into the little nooks and crannies as much as I can. And now what I'm going to do is pour some of that resin into the mold about a quarter of the way, and I want to start to slowly rotate the mold so that the walls of the inside of the mold get covered evenly with that resin. This is just going to ensure that that resin gets into all the little areas behind the ears are really problematic, and especially the tip of the nose, and especially on this Muldoon because he's got a weird hook nose or whatever, and the air bubbles really like to get trapped in that particular area. So once I get it all turned around, I'm going to top it off, and then as I'm topping it off, I'm giving a little shake and a little tap, and just making sure that there's no bubbles coming to the surface, that this is a clean resin and it won't have any imperfections or impurities or anything like that in it. It's just going to come out and it's going to look clean. So tap that mold just to make sure that there's no air bubbles in there to ruin it, because resin is expensive. You want to make sure you get it right the first time. So after I make sure that, there's no air bubbles in it, I'm going to let this thing cure. The resin takes about 10 minutes to cure hard in a nice warm environment. If it's a little bit colder, it takes a little bit longer, but this is the finished product here, right? So this is the resin head out of the mold fresh, and it's already looking good. No imperfections in it. Shaking it and, prepping the mold for the resin, taking that extra step really pays off. You can see here, this is the Kenner head next to the one that's scaled up to the 6-inch figure, and it looks awesome already. It looks just like Robert Peck, or whatever his name was, who played Robert Muldoon. The sculptor who did this was amazing, who worked for Kenner. So now we have to kind of customize this head a little bit to make it fit on the 6-inch figure, the ball joint on there. So this is me just taking the X-Acto knife and cutting off that neck on Muldoon's head. Got to get rid of the neck area and take the Dremel, or take a drill here actually, and hog out the majority of the bulk resin that's inside that head, and just kind of slowly drill it out, and then carve the rest of it out with an X-Acto knife. Trying to be super careful here. You don't want to cut through the head or anything like that, or cut off a piece that you don't want. Fortunately, the 65D is a really semi-rigid resin, so it's not like super brittle. It's actually pretty strong. But another tool here that you might want to add to your arsenal is a Dremel with a ball joint bit. This thing comes in handy for actually drilling out the ball joint socket for parts to fit onto ball joints. So, I mean, you can see here, I can just stick it in and I can drill out a perfect ball joint socket, and it'll fit perfectly on the 6-inch figure head or body. So we'll see here. I'll show you a little demonstration. Just pop it on and click it into the socket, and it's ready to rock and roll. So now we're going to move on to painting. Now, I am by no means an expert when it comes to painting human faces or eyeballs or anything like that. There is a video that I use to sort of as a guide to paint eyeballs, and I'm going to link that down below. You guys feel free to go and check that out and absorb that information. The guy who does it is a professional model painter, and he does a really great job at showing you how to paint eyes. Again, I'm still in the learning stages of painting eyes. They are really hard to do. You can kind of fake it till you make it with dinosaur eyes, but human eyes, if you don't get them right, they'll just look like dead eyes, So on this one here, I started off painting Muldoon's sockets black, and then I went in with a nice off-white color to do the sort of eyeball area, and then I went back in with black to do the pupil, trying to just make it look like it's an eyeball, as natural as possible. But it is really difficult, even with a fine tip brush and holding my breath the entire time. Also, filming this and trying to do it is really, really hard. So just do your best and keep practicing. So now we're going to move on to painting his hair. I got some Model Masters leather brown here, and I'm just going to do a couple of coats of that brown on his hair. Again, holding your breath while doing it. Also, oh my goodness, eyebrows. These are so difficult to do, and this is such a tiny little area to have to get it just right and symmetrical. But yeah, this is painting faces is not my forte. It's not what I'm really good at, but I'll keep practicing at it and get better. And just have to apply that to pretty much everything in life. Just get better at it and practice. Paint something every day, and eventually you'll get to where it looks decent. So again, here now I'm going in with a flesh wash, and this is just a mix of a really dark flesh color, thinned down to almost a water-like consistency, and I'm washing it into his ears and in the lines in his eyes, around his nose, and the lines on either side of his mouth and in between his lips, just trying to give some flesh tone shadow. If you don't want to make this, you can always buy flesh shade from Citadel. They have a really great flesh shade wash. Now I'm going to give him a little 5 o'clock shadow, kind of make him look gruff and tough, and this is just some dark shade from what is it, Army War Paints or something like that. I can't remember the name of the brand, but it's like their zombie line of paints, but they have a nice dark shade wash, and I'm going to lightly apply this over his chin area just to kind of give him a little 5 o'clock shadow. Just makes it look a little bit more realistic, and then let that dry. And now we're going to assemble the figure. So as I said, I'm using Duke from the G.I. Joe Classifieds series. I started picking up a lot of the G.I. Joe figures, and then they became impossible to get, and I just didn't have it in me to keep trying to track down the Cobra Island Troopers. But I used Owen Grady's vest, and then I took off all of Duke's accessories. I don't really need them, but I kind of had a cool Jurassic Park vibe. And I've got Gung Ho's backpack here, and Gung Ho's backpack surprisingly holds Muldoon's Kenner missiles and really well on either side. I thought that was actually pretty cool that they just kind of click into the side there. Looks kind of neat, kind of like a modern take on the Kenner Muldoon. I just think this is really fun, and I kind of really want to do this with the rest of the characters, just kind of make modern Kenner style figures of the Jurassic Park characters. But he's looking awesome. And I've got this little spaz shotgun here that I picked up in a cheap military set. I can't even remember where it comes from, but he looks just so awesome. Really happy with the way this turned out. He's just a cool looking figure, and I know eventually we're going to be getting an Amber Collection Muldoon. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. So I'm really excited when we get that Muldoon, because then I'll have more of a movie accurate costume that I can put him in. and I don't have to like custom make one or anything like that, because I was going to make a custom Muldoon outfit to make him look just like from the movie, but I figured why waste that time when they're probably just going to release an Amber Collection Muldoon, and if they do, then I've got this really cool Kenner Muldoon head to put on that body, and plus he'll probably have his hat, which that'll make it look even better, take that to the next level. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video, a little behind the scenes look on, you know, how I make these things. I know this is a really long video. If you made it this far, congratulations. It's like what, 17-minute video or 16-minute video or something. So I appreciate you all sticking around and watching. I hope you found the information provided useful, and it's helped you, you know, inspire you to get out there and maybe try your hand at mold making. But remember, for more Jurassic Park related content, you guys know where to find me. Links will be in the description box below. You guys take care, and I will see you in the next video.